This truck needs to be at King of the Hammers in less than a week and a half. This week we are going to wrap it, so that means we got body work, we've got to put on fiberglass fenders, and by the end of the video, I'd like to see it sitting on its own weight, all 4 tires mounted. We'll see what we can do.
Some of you that have been following the channel for a while might remember last year I went down to Mexico in my Toyota Tacoma and I gave it a healthy diet of rocks. And while I was down there, we did incur a little bit of body damage. The first of was probably going to end up being a lot over time. But in any case, today we're going to wrap this truck. And before we wrap it, I want to clean up this body damage a little bit, and then we'll move from that onto the fiberglass fenders. For repairing small dented sections like this, I like to use my stud welder, and this is something that's very simple to use. It grounds itself to the chassis whenever you pull the trigger, or in this case, whenever you flip the switch, and it makes it to where you give yourself these little copper studs that you can then pull out with a very small slide hammer. There's a little bit of a trick to this. You don't want to pull it out too fast. You want to slowly pull it out from different sections and work your way around over and over, and then maybe trim away that set of studs and then reattach some new ones. But with a little bit of work of a body hammer and this stud pulling tool, you can usually get pretty dang close to where you just need a very thin layer of body filler at the end of the day.
Good morning. We let this cure overnight, and now we no longer have a giant dent back here. It's just gray, and this is all going to be covered in vinyl. Vinyl's extremely forgiving, so even if there's any small like scratches or anything that you would normally put a little more like spot glaze over, we don't really need to in this case. And that is the first of many times we'll be doing body work on this truck, I'm sure. So the next thing we need to do is install these fiberglass fenders from McNeil Racing. I've got fiberglass bedsides in the back, but I want to start with these front fenders, and there's a bracket up here that I already am wondering about. It's to connect the headlight. I know they changed the headlights or something at some point in the 3rd gen Tacoma range, so I'm curious what kind of modifications we're going to need in order to fit these up.
For anybody who's watching this video that's new to fiberglass work, just know that the fitment is not necessarily up to the manufacturer, it's up to the installer. Basically what I'm saying is that the fiberglass comes really close to what you need, but it's up to you to shape it to the level of detail and fitment that you desire. For me, I want the body lines to be somewhat straight, but it's not that critical because at the end of the day, this is a wheeler, and the wrap that we're going to use is actually going to hide any body lines really well. I think it goes without saying that whoever designed this truck clearly didn't think that someone would be putting 38s on it one day, so there's obviously going to be a little bit of trimming. I'm hoping that all I have to do on the back side of the tire is a basic cut and fold, because I know that on the front of the tire I'm going to have to do a lot of trimming and a lot of body work in order to give us enough clearance to turn the tires at full stuff. For those of you that are interested in installing a set of McNeil Racing fenders, don't cut this off. So I cut it off on this side because I thought I was going to try to use this bracket. I was going to make something that was going to be able to hold the light really solid and hold the fender really solid. But once I trimmed this off because the fender wanted, or sorry, because the tire wanted to eat it, I realized really quickly that I should not have cut that off. But very easy to fix. That's why I like working with fiberglass. So this is what it's supposed to look like over here. There's no instructions anywhere that I could find on how to install these, so I'm just winging it and trimming off what I think is going to be excess material. And so far, this side looks like it's going to be good to go. And I decided to drill some holes through here because I'm going to bolt these two together with some threaded rivets. Oh, and before I forget, so this is what it looks like with all of this cut and folded and all ready for paint. So I just sealed it up with some seam sealer that I got at AutoZone. And same thing over here. I just cut it. I cut it. I used the jack to jack up and fill this gap because I just basically trimmed a huge section out, and then I jacked it up, and then I used the welder to stitch weld it, and I used a body hammer to just kind of fold over in some spots and whatnot, and then boom, seam sealer. It's all good to go. So now once this is completely dry, we'll cover it all with black paint and it should blend in pretty good. So the next thing I want to do is install this coilover. In the pre-COVID days, whenever I would order coilovers and shocks, I would just build the suspension first, and then I would take a measurement, so mounting point to mounting point, and then I would find the exact coilover, the exact shock that I need, and I'd order it because you could just get shocks and coilovers on demand. There was never really, be like a couple weeks tops for stuff to get made. But now there's giant waiting lists, and it makes it to where you have to kind of just guess and predict what lengths all of your stuff is going to be, which is what I just did on the rear of this truck. Because could you imagine, I finished the rear suspension last week, and now I got to wait for a year. Supposedly there's a year waiting list for Kings right now, so I wait for a year for the coilovers to come in. That sucks. So I guessed, and we got close enough. I mean, I could have went with a little bit longer coilover, but that's okay. We made it work, and we were able to ballpark it. So with the front, I ordered these last February. I didn't get them until like last June or July. These are Bilstein 8112s. And it was a gamble because I didn't know what my measurements were gonna be on the kit. And whenever I ordered these, Marlin didn't, at least I don't believe, they had any measurements or dimensions for the coilovers that they recommend yet. Now they do. But what's interesting is that this is only a 5-inch travel shock. They recommend an 8-inch travel shock, but I'm still somehow able to take full advantage of the travel here. So that's why I'm giving you this little spiel, is for those of you that are ordering an RCLT and you're not sure what size coilover to get, I'm just gonna give you some of my measurements, and then hopefully this will help you and translate to whatever build you're doing. So right now we're completely collapsed. We're at 17 and 5/8 from the hole to the mounting surface on top. What's interesting is that with these little spacers here, I was able to completely fix this scenario. So this is 1 1/8 inch worth of spacers. I got these on Amazon, and our collapsed measurement is 17.5 exactly. So it works perfect. So I can take full advantage. So basically right now, we're fully stuffed. We're at the factory, we're at the bump stop that Marlin Crawler provided with the kit. So this is set up exactly how Marlin Crawler sends it to you. I didn't adjust anything out or anything like that. This is literally just the bump stop bottomed out on the mount and everything. And then whenever I do a fully extended length or extended measurement, I thought that's where I was gonna be screwed with this coilover, but it works perfect. So fully extended, we were at like 23 3/4, and we set our limit strap, Mike and I, based on where the RCV started to bind. So it started to bind, pump it up like 1 inch or so, just to make sure you're far outside of that bind, and then set the strap. And this fully extended is like just over 23.5. So I'm just gonna take a little bit out of this strap, and we should be all good to go. I could not have got luckier. But what's interesting to me is that they recommend an 8-inch travel shock, and this is a 5-inch travel shock. But with just a couple of spacers, we're able to take full advantage of pretty much every inch that we can of travel out of the kit. So you could get more up travel if you cut the factory bump stop out of the way and then put your own hydro bump or something like that. But I mean, we'll see once we get to King of Hammers in a couple weeks, right? But I think that we're gonna have a crap ton of travel,
and I was able to make it work with the shorter shock. So I hope that these measurements that I just spit out into the internet will help you if you are gonna order this kit, and then you might know a little bit better ballpark on what to order. But I'll link all this stuff in the description of the video, the coilovers, the exact spacers that I use. So if you have access to any of this stuff and maybe it's a shorter wait time, this might be the way to go.
Now that I've got that little explanation out of the way, I need to hurry up, get this front suspension mounted, modify our front fenders, get those curing so I can get started on the rear, because really soon I'm gonna have some help show up to help me with this wrap. When I was looking around online, I got real mixed information on how you do the bedsides on the Tacoma. Some people say you need to drill out the spot welds. Some people say you just unbolt it. I decided to drill out all the spot welds because really it's not that big of a job. And I wanted to have the extra rigidity of the fiberglass draping over the existing steel structure. With a little bit of trimming, these fiberglass bedsides go right over the top. And then I can start to drill out all the holes, mount everything in place, and then we can mock up our bed.
It's time. The guys from Petty Wraps, this is Randy.
How's it going?
They've traveled out here to help me do this wrap. I'm in an extreme crunch. Originally, I was gonna wrap this thing myself, but whenever you have the opportunity to have someone help you and a professional do it, I, for one, am not too proud.
Randy showed up with a group of 3 helpers, and it was all hands on deck. This made the job extremely efficient. Everybody was always doing something, and it took this big, intimidating job of doing a wrap for me and simplified it, and I even got trained by people that actually know what they're doing. When I was buying vinyl for this project, I wanted to choose a pattern that was really wild, something that's going to stand out in a big way, and I know that this is going to be a controversial color scheme, but for some reason, a red camo design with like a Japanese sun on the hood, it said JDM. I love old JDM cars and trucks, and this design, even though it's on a brand new Toyota Tacoma, is kind of a throwback for me to the JDM stuff that I used to love to look at in magazines back in high school. And in the next episode of this series, you're going to see me build even more stuff on this truck that's going to be kind of a throwback and kind of a nod to the Toyota trucks that have been built before this one.
Mr. Randy,
Yo!
you got time to answer some questions?
Heck yeah, I do. Just for you, I do.
Just for me. So for people who watch my channel, most of them are DIYers. They like to do this kind of stuff themselves. For someone who's never done a wrap before, what would be like the top 3 things you'd recommend they do?
I would say the biggest one, the number one, everybody wants to go cheap, right? Because they're like, oh, I don't know how to wrap, so I'm going to go with the cheapest material possible. Dude, that's going to make it harder on your life, and it's going to suck. Get a good quality material. I tell everybody stay away from, you know, Amazon vinyls like Vivid, stuff like that. A good reputable like Avery, 3M, KPMF. It'll make your life easier, and learning how to use the material will be a lot easier and more friendly for you. That's my first tip.
That makes a lot of sense. So what we use today is Avery.
Yeah, we use Avery, which is an awesome brand. Prints good, and it's got air release and everything like that you need. The second tip I would probably say would be your prep on your vehicle. Just make sure everything's clean. The cleaner the vehicle, you know, the more you can do to get any little tar spots, anything off, is just going to make it a lot better to do. And the third, it's going to sound stupid, but practice, you know, like your teacher always said, you just got to do it, you know?
Oh yeah, I say that a lot with welding on my channel. You just got to get your hours in.
Dude, get your hours in, start small and flat, learn how the vinyl reacts, and learn how much it can stretch and not stretch before it'll fail, and, you know, and then it's just time, just practicing, you get better as you go.
I did my absolute best to take advantage of Randy's time and expertise while him and his team were here in the shop. I asked lots of questions, I wrapped a bunch of the smaller pieces, and would get pointers from him along the way, because I'm not always going to go to a professional for this kind of job. And like many of you, I want to learn to do this just like welding or just like 12 volt. It's just another skill to have in your back pocket, so whenever you do these big projects, you get to do a lot of it yourself. It was a real honor to have a good team like this show up and help me with this build. It was such a giant advantage on making sure that I can get this truck done in time to bring to King of the Hammers.
Gentlemen, the truck looks wonderful. Thank you so much for coming down.
Yeah, dude, not a problem. It's our pleasure.
It's been fun getting to know these guys. It's been fun learning another like skill set. And I know there's not a lot of how-to in this video on how to do wraps, but I've learned a lot. So as I continue to sharpen this skill set, I will be able to relay some of this information to you guys on the channel. But if you want this to be done by professional, how do they get a hold of you, Randy?
3 different ways. You can go on to Google, obviously is the biggest one, my Instagram, and also Facebook, just Petty Wraps. Just Google me and get a hold of me. All my phone number and everything, emails on there and everything.
And he's in like the Post Falls?
Spokane, Washington.
Like Spokane area.
Yep.
Yeah. I was thinking Twin Falls. Twin Falls on the other side?
No, it's way down south.
Okay, Post Falls. I get all those confused. Anyway, the Spokane area, if you're in that area, that's where his shop is. So thank you so much for watching. We were going to do like a walk around of this truck when it's done. Next week, we are doing bumpers, sliders. I'm going to get this bed mounted. We've got a lot to do in the next like 4 days. So tune in for that.